We tend to think of the digital footprint of our federal government as kind of like an immutable ledger, right?
Yeah, like it's set in stone.
Exactly. Like if an FBI agent in the field interviews a source, that information is logged into a secure database. It gets a timestamp. It becomes part of the permanent historical record. You assume that, no matter what happens politically, that raw data just simply exists as a fixed point of reality.
Yeah, you'd certainly hope so.
But this massive, newly declassified stack of intelligence files we are unpacking in today's deep dive, it suggests a pretty terrifying alternative.
Oh, absolutely.
We're looking at a digital architecture where the official record can be quietly rewritten, where evidence doesn't just get ignored, it gets retroactively erased from the system.
Yeah, and the documents we're looking at today, they detail an alleged FBI operation codenamed Round River. And, looking at the recent reporting from the Federalist and just the news on this reads way less like standard bureaucratic maneuvering and much, much more like a coordinated effort to blind the Justice Department's own leadership.
Which is just wild.
It really is. I mean, we are talking about the mechanics of how a federal agency supposedly neutralized corruption allegations surrounding one of the most prominent political families in the country, the Bidens.
Yeah. And before we really get into the weeds here, I need to say something important up front.
Go for it.
Because we are dealing with highly politically charged sources involving figures on both the left and the right, we want to make it absolutely clear to you, we are not taking any sides today.
Exactly. We are completely neutral on this.
Right. Our goal is not to endorse the viewpoints of these articles or validate the politics, but simply to impartially report on the claims, facts, and ideas contained in this original source material so you can understand what is being alleged.
Because the real objective here is to understand the administrative machinery itself. If you, as a citizen, are trying to make sense of the daily news cycle, you really need to understand how an intelligence agency can theoretically build a bureaucratic wall to make evidence just, disappear.
Yeah, and to see that machinery at work, we really have to look at Pittsburgh in January 2020.
Right, the setup.
Because you have a situation here that almost defies logic. So then Attorney General Bill Barr tasks a U.S. attorney, a guy named Scott Brady, to formally vet a mountain of evidence related to alleged Ukrainian corruption and the Biden family.
And Brady is told to, run the searches, build the timelines, evaluate if there's a legitimate criminal case to be made there.
Right. He is operating under a direct mandate from the highest law enforcement officer in the country.
Which is a huge deal. So Brady sets up shop to execute that mandate. But the declassified files reveal that, simultaneously, the FBI launched Operation Round River out of the exact same city.
Pittsburgh.
Right in Pittsburgh. And Round River's objective was the polar opposite of Brady's. Their goal was to actively neutralize the very allegations Brady was just instructed to investigate.
Okay, let's unpack this. How does the Attorney General's hand-picked investigator have literally no idea this counter-operation is happening right under his nose?
Well,
because, the U.S. Attorney has access to the FBI's primary case management database, right? The system called Sentinel.
Yeah, Sentinel.
So he should be able to see every file, every informant report, every piece of intelligence touching the names Burisma or Biden.
He should, yeah. Unless those files are placed under a specific stealth feature within Sentinel known as prohibited access.
Prohibited access.
Right. And this isn't just like a classified folder that requires a higher clearance level. It's not like you click it and it says enter password.
Right. It's not a padlock.
No, the architecture of a prohibited access designation is way more insidious than that. If an investigator runs a keyword search for a file shielded by this protocol, the system doesn't throw up a red flag saying access denied.
So what does it do?
It simply returns 0 results. It generates a null return.
Oh, wow. So it effectively creates a false reality for the user.
Exactly.
It's like two people are tasked with organizing a massive library, but one is secretly taking all the controversial books and locking them in an invisible vault before the other one can even read the titles.
That's a great way to look at it. The CEO, or in this case, the U.S. Attorney searches, sees nothing and just assumes the documents don't exist.
So Brady is just spinning his wheels.
Totally. He's running these exhaustive queries, completely unaware that the Round River team has rendered the exact documents he's looking for invisible to his specific search parameters.
That's active compartmentalization.
It goes way beyond just a lack of interagency communication, right?
Yeah.
By using the prohibited access feature, the FBI is actively blinding the Justice Department's leadership. The U.S. attorney thinks he's reviewing the full deck of cards, but the deck has been entirely stacked from the inside.
But wait, this raises a huge red flag for me that immediately begs the question of authorization.
Right.
If a team inside the FBI is going to actively hide intelligence from a U.S. attorney, they need a bulletproof justification, don't they?
You would think so. But the sources pinpoint the origin of this to December 2019 inside the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force, specifically the Russia Unit, FATFR.
Okay.
And the 2025 summary from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. The DNI describes the formation of this team using a very alarming word. They call it unofficial.
Wait, unofficial?
Yeah, an unofficial group of analysts.
So they just bypassed standard authorized counterintelligence protocol?
Apparently, yes. This self-assembled team utilized internal systems to gather all the derogatory information reported by confidential human sources regarding what they dubbed the Ukraine narrative.
Which means Burisma, Joe Biden, and Hunter Biden.
Correct. And once they gathered it, they retroactively flagged the entire cache as Russian disinformation.
Wait. I have a really hard time understanding how this system allows that.
Mm-hmm.
Can an unofficial group of analysts just go into a highly monitored federal database, take intelligence provided by trusted, vetted informants over nearly a decade, and retroactively rewrite the files to call it foreign propaganda?
That's what the documents allege.
Without actually investigating if the claims are true. Didn't someone upstairs require them to, corroborate this first?
According to the DNI's 2025 summary, no, not at all.
You're kidding.
The DNI explicitly states that the Round River team did not corroborate any of the allegations before stamping them as disinformation. What's fascinating here is they didn't conduct field interviews to prove the claims false.
So what did they do?
They simply altered the informants' files. And some of these files dated all the way back to 2012.
Wow.
Yeah, they inserted new intelligence products into the Sentinel system to make it appear as though this long-term reporting had been officially assessed and dismissed as a total fabrication.
But why? Why go through the trouble of altering a decade's worth of files instead of just challenging the evidence in Brady's investigation?
What's fascinating here is the massive bureaucratic power of a counterintelligence label.
Okay.
It comes down to the difference between Title 18 and Title 50 authorities in federal law.
Walk me through that.
Sure. So a Title 18 criminal investigation requires evidence, due process, and eventually public disclosure in a courtroom where defense attorneys can actually challenge the facts.
Right. Standard criminal law.
Exactly. But a Title 50 national security matter, that is a classified black box.
Ah.
If you want to kill a criminal probe, you don't actually have to prove the evidence is fake. You just have to label the source of the evidence as a national security threat.
Oh, I see.
By branding the informant's files as Russian disinformation, they changed the jurisdiction. It went from a potential criminal matter requiring prosecutors to a counterintelligence matter requiring suppression, to protect the country.
So by stamping it disinformation,
Yeah.
they legally walled the raw intelligence off from anyone trying to build a criminal case.
Precisely.
Well, since the DNI report confirms they didn't even bother to verify the claims, we really need to look at what was actually in those original files.
Yeah, we do.
Like, what were these informants reporting that triggered such a drastic cover-up?
So the DNI summary outlines reporting from 14 different confidential human sources.
Yeah.
And these were drawn from a broader network of over 40 sources who had provided information to the Bureau over the years.
So this wasn't just one guy.
Not at all. Rather than just isolated rumors, these 14 informants were building a highly detailed, escalating narrative of a really sophisticated corruption scheme.
Yeah, the declassified documents focus heavily on a timeline of escalation. Starting back in 2015, one informant, we'll call him CHS number 1, reported a conversation with a Russian intelligence officer.
Right.
And this officer claimed that Mykola Zlochevsky, who is the owner of the Ukrainian energy company Burisma, was using his relationship with Hunter Biden as a long-term operation or a long penetration. The explicit goal was to get closer to American policymakers.
And the timing of that 2015 report is absolutely critical.
Because of the vice presidency.
Exactly. That is right after Hunter Biden was hired to the Burisma board while his father was actively serving as vice president. The informant is flagging a potential national security compromise in real time, years before it became a public controversy.
And the intelligence didn't stop at vague warnings of access either.
No, it got very specific.
Very specific. Another highly vetted source reporting between 2017 and 2022 detailed the actual financial mechanics of the alleged bribery.
Yeah, CHS number 2.
Right. This source claimed that Zlochevsky paid the Ukrainian president at the time, Petro Poroshenko, $100 million to shut down an active Interpol investigation into his activities.
Which is a staggering claim.
And it gets crazier. The source alleged that 2 CIA officers personally escorted Zlochevsky to Ukraine's prosecutor general to ensure the deal went through, claiming Zlochevsky was protected by the U.S.
Yeah, and the level of detail provided regarding the corporate structure of that payout is what usually triggers a massive financial crimes probe. The informant described how Burisma utilized 13 different shell companies to pass money through fake consulting contracts. This money was allegedly routed through Latvia specifically to pay investors, and they explicitly named Joe and Hunter Biden as recipients.
Wow. And then the files also show a third informant, someone who had been working on and off for the U.S. government since 2008, claiming in October 2019 that Hunter Biden had personally consulted with them before deciding to join the Burisma board.
Yeah.
So if you have an asset who has been trusted by the government and paid for their intelligence since 2008, why would the Bureau suddenly flip the script on their credibility the exact moment their intelligence touches a presidential candidate?
Well, this represents the core conflict highlighted in the source material, right? It's the clash between the institutional duty to pursue raw evidence of criminal corruption versus the administrative temptation to protect a powerful political figure by weaponizing the intelligence apparatus.
Because acknowledging they're credible is a huge problem.
Exactly. Acknowledging that these long-term informants are credible means the FBI actually has to investigate the frontrunner for the presidency. But labeling the informants as vectors of Russian disinformation, that makes the political problem disappear beneath the veil of national security.
Yeah. But, the Round River operation clearly didn't just stop at burying the informant's files in an invisible digital vault.
No, they went further.
Because hiding the documents only works if nobody is actively looking for them.
Right.
If you want to permanently kill a narrative, you also have to neutralize the people who are publicly asking questions about it. And the declassified files reveal a spreadsheet that takes this operation from a defensive cover-up to a very offensive campaign.
The defensive briefing spreadsheet.
Yes.
This document provides just a startling window into how this unofficial task force viewed the American political and media landscape. They literally sorted dozens of prominent Americans and organizations into 2 distinct categories regarding the Biden-Ukraine story.
Okay, what were the categories?
Targets of Russian disinformation and conduits who spread it.
And the sorting was highly, highly partisan.
Epically.
The targets, meaning the unwitting victims of the disinformation, were exclusively Democrats. The list included Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and John Kerry. But the conduits, the people supposedly doing the work of foreign intelligence by spreading this information, were Republicans and conservative media figures.
Right.
You had Rudy Giuliani, Fox News, Mike Pompeo, Senators Chuck Grassley and Ron Johnson, and investigative journalists like John Solomon.
But the most profound entry on the entire spreadsheet, honestly, is the inclusion of sitting Attorney General Bill Barr in the conduit column.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Treating the head of the Department of Justice as a conduit for foreign propaganda because he initiated an official investigation is just staggering.
It's unbelievable.
So it's like a bouncer at a nightclub using a VIP list not to protect the club, but to throw out the club's owner, the Attorney General, just for asking to see the security footage.
That's exactly what it is. The FBI task force viewed their own boss's legitimate legal inquiry as a national security vulnerability.
Wow.
It is a closed-loop system of circular logic.
How so?
Well, the task force predetermined, without corroboration, that the corruption allegations were Russian disinformation. Right. Therefore, anyone who sought to investigate those allegations, whether it was a journalist asking questions, a sitting senator conducting oversight, or the attorney general running a probe, was automatically classified as an agent of foreign propaganda.
And the sources make it clear they didn't just passively categorize these people on a spreadsheet.
Yep.
They acted on these designations using defensive briefings.
Yeah.
The FBI would formally warn lawmakers that they were being targeted by Russian intelligence.
Yeah.
And Senators Grassley and Johnson have been arguing for years that these briefings were a sham. They claimed the briefings weren't designed to protect national security at all, but were deployed as a deliberate tactic to thwart their ongoing congressional investigations.
Because the bureaucratic brilliance of a defensive briefing is that it functions as a weapon of paralysis.
Explain that.
If the FBI briefs a senator that the witness they are about to call or the document they're about to subpoena is a product of Russian intelligence, the senator is effectively forced to back off.
Oh, I see.
Because to continue the investigation is to risk being publicly accused of aiding a hostile foreign power. The briefing itself becomes the mechanism to shut down the inquiry, creating a paper trail that taints the Oversight Committee's work.
So we are looking at these files now in August 2026. The invisible vaults have finally been opened. How did this internal machinery actually come to light? And, what is the fallout for the agency now?
Well, the declassification was heavily driven by FBI Director Kash Patel and Attorney General Pam Bondi.
Right.
They provided these files to Congress, which are the very files that Senator Grassley had been demanding to see for years. And Director Patel has officially terminated the Foreign Influence Task Force and placed its entire scope of activities under internal investigation.
And Patel's directive to the Transparency Task Force is incredibly blunt. He explicitly states they're investigating whether the FITF used the Round River operation specifically to undermine ongoing investigations to advance a political narrative.
Rather than to fight actual foreign threats.
Exactly.
And the reporting notes that Round River does not exist in a vacuum. It fits a broader pattern of the counterintelligence apparatus being deployed in domestic political arenas.
Right. They mention other operations.
Yeah, the articles reference the 2017 operation codenamed Oxford, which probed whether President Trump was acting as a Russian asset for firing FBI Director James Comey. And prior to that, the sprawling Crossfire hurricane investigation.
This is a recurring theme.
Exactly. The through line identified in the sources is the alleged use of Title 50 national security powers to target political opponents and shield political allies from Title 18 criminal exposure.
And what makes the Round River operation so devastating in hindsight is that while the FBI was allegedly altering files to bury this intelligence, the core of what the informants were reporting eventually surfaced anyway.
It did.
Over the past few years, Hunter Biden was convicted of tax and gun crimes, though he was later pardoned by his father. IRS whistleblowers came forward with hard financial evidence of the very schemes the informants described. Former business partners testified under oath, and in August 2024, the House Oversight Committee concluded their probe by stating Joe Biden actively participated in an impeachable influence peddling conspiracy involving millions of dollars from foreign interests.
And to think the raw evidence was sitting in the Sentinel database the entire time.
It's unbelievable.
And the network of 14 informants had pointed the FBI directly toward the financial mechanisms of the scheme. But the bureaucratic machinery was utilized to alter that reality, classify it as a phantom foreign threat, and make it disappear from the official record.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Whether you lean left, right, or center, you rely on these institutions to be the neutral referees of our democracy. They're supposed to protect the public from legitimate threats.
Exactly.
But when the referee builds a covert administrative apparatus to secretly rewrite the rulebook, hide the replay footage, and quarantine anyone who asks questions, the entire game is compromised.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it represents a catastrophic vulnerability in our institutions. An agency designed to be a shield for the nation can easily be inverted into a shield for the powerful.
Right.
It protects them from accountability. Once the administrative state discovers it can legally classify political embarrassment as a national security threat, public trust in the objective reality of government records just shatters.
Well, we've looked at an astonishing sequence of events today. A U.S. attorney trying to conduct an official investigation while his own agency engineered digital blind spots in his database. An unofficial task force rewriting the historical files of long-term informants to brand their intelligence as disinformation without corroborating a single claim. And a spreadsheet that weaponized the concept of national security to label journalists, sitting senators, and the attorney general as foreign conduits.
It is a masterclass in the weaponization of bureaucracy. But, it leaves us with a lingering question based on the source material we've reviewed today.
That's it.
Think deeply about the historical record we rely on. If a federal agency has the administrative power to retroactively alter databases, to change the dates of intelligence reports, and to stamp its own vetted informants as foreign disinformation, simply out of political convenience, how can future historians, or even us today, ever hope to piece together an objective reality from official government archives? If the official record can be edited in the shadows with a few keystrokes, what else in our history has been quietly rewritten?
Wow. It certainly makes you view the phrase according to official records in a completely different light. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the narrative, look closely at how the machinery operates, and we will see you next time.
Welcome to The Explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here today because we're diving into something that is, quite frankly, extraordinary. Back in August 2026, the White House Government Transparency Task Force declassified a massive cache of intelligence documents, and they basically sent shockwaves straight through Washington. These files revealed a highly secretive counterintelligence operation codenamed Operation Round River. Now, according to these documents, this entire operation was designed to actively manage and even neutralize narratives surrounding the Biden family during the 2020 election. It's a really dense, complex story packed with bureaucratic maneuvering, but hey, that's exactly why we're here. We're going to rely strictly on the data and the declassified source material to figure out exactly what happened.
So here's our roadmap. We've broken this down into 5 quick sections. Section 1 is the Round River revelations. Section 2 covers the anatomy of the operation. Section 3 dives into the informant files. Section 4 looks at the targets and conduits. And Section 5 wraps up with the fallout and internal investigations. Let's jump right in.
All right, Section 1, the Round River revelations. Let's look at what these declassified documents actually exposed.
Look at this number right here, 14. According to a newly public letter from the FBI director, the Bureau literally had 14 different informants giving them derogatory information about the Biden family's foreign business dealings. But here's the catch. The source documents indicate that instead of actually investigating these leads, Operation Round River allegedly tried to sweep it all under the rug by categorizing the evidence as Russian disinformation. Just think about the sheer scale of that for a second. 14 separate individual sources of intelligence, all reportedly caught up and neutralized in this one single counterintelligence net. Okay, the timeline here is pretty wild, so stick with me. The earliest intelligence from these informants dates all the way back to 2012. But Operation Round River, it didn't officially launch until December 2019, right smack in the middle of the first impeachment proceedings against President Trump. The declassified summary from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence points out that this 2019 task force basically went back in time. They retroactively tagged years of prior reporting, even stuff from 7 years earlier, as disinformation. And the craziest part? The whole shebang remained completely hidden from the public and lawmakers until it was declassified in August 2026.
Moving on to Section 2, Anatomy of the Operation. How did this actually function inside the FBI's massive bureaucracy?
So first up, we need to talk about the FIFT, the Foreign Influence Task Force. Based on the 2025 DNI summary, a group of analysts within the FIFT's Russia unit unofficially formed the Round River operation. Actually, let's pause on that word unofficially, because that's a huge takeaway. When intelligence analysts just self-assemble outside of normal authorization channels, it raises some immediate, massive questions about oversight. The sources tell us this wasn't some formally authorized investigation open through standard protocols. Instead, it was a self-assembled group that took it upon themselves to gather every single piece of derogatory reporting on what they called the Ukraine narrative regarding the Bidens in the energy company Burisma.
Next term to know. CHS, or Confidential Human Source. These are essentially your informants on the ground providing raw intelligence to the Bureau. The DNI summary explicitly states that the Round River team didn't actually corroborate any of the allegations provided by these sources. No, instead, they accessed these CHS files and allegedly altered them. They inserted new intelligence products specifically designed to make this long-term reporting look completely fabricated, officially stamping it as Russian propaganda.
So how did they pull it off? The sources lay out a 3-step playbook. First, gather all the reporting. Second, slap a Russian disinformation red flag on it. And third, and this is the absolute kicker, lock the files under prohibited access. Now, why does that third step matter so much? Because by locking these files in the FBI's database with a stealth prohibited access tag, they became completely invisible. This intentionally blinded U.S. Attorney Scott Brady over in Pittsburgh, who had been specifically assigned by then Attorney General Bill Barr to investigate these exact corruption allegations. So the FBI's internal operation was allegedly building a firewall to hide files from the very prosecutor the head of the DOJ told to go find them. Wild, right?
All right, Section 3, the informant files. Let's get into the actual intelligence that was allegedly being neutralized. The DNI summary gives us 3 distinct examples.
Here's a direct quote pulled straight from the file of CHS number 1. This reporting actually dates back to 2015. This informant claimed to know a Russian intelligence officer who flat out stated that Burisma owner Mykola Zlochevsky was using his relationship with Hunter Biden to get closer to the Americans. The intelligence officer explicitly called it a long-term operation and a long penetration.
And notice how this builds when we look at CHS number 2, who reported between 2017 and 2022. Honestly, the claims here are pretty staggering. This source alleged that Zlochevsky paid the Ukrainian president $100 million just to stop an Interpol case against him. On top of that, the source claims 2 CIA officers personally escorted Zlochevsky to the Ukrainian prosecutor general, telling him he was protected by the US. This very same informant also detailed how Burisma has supposedly used 13 different companies to funnel money through fake consulting contracts.
And finally, we've got CHS number 3. This report dropped in October 2019, right when those first impeachment proceedings were dominating Washington. This source claimed to have direct access to Hunter Biden, stating that Hunter actually consulted the informant before he even decided to join Burisma's board. Now, according to the declassified summary, instead of running down any of these leads, the Round River analysts just drafted documents to falsely portray the reporting as fabricated Russian disinformation.
Let's transition over to Section 4, Targets and Conduits. This brings us to what might just be the most eye-opening document in the entire cache.
Check out this spreadsheet breakdown. The Round River team basically categorized over 6 dozen public figures into 2 strict columns: targets of Russian disinformation and conduits who were spreading it. And the political divide here is impossible to miss. Prominent Democrats were labeled as the victims, the targets. Meanwhile, Republicans and conservative media figures, they were thrown into the conduit category. We're talking about the FBI literally labeling the sitting Attorney General of the United States, Bill Barr, and the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, as conduits for Russian propaganda, and they lumped journalists investigating the story right in there with them.
So what does this actually mean in practice? Well, the documents show that Rudy Giuliani, who was acting as a lawyer investigating the Ukraine issue at the time, was the initial focus of the whole operation. Furthermore, lawmakers like Senators Chuck Grassley and Ron Johnson were flagged as conduits. The big concern now is that official FBI defensive briefings, which are supposed to be used to warn lawmakers of real foreign threats, were potentially weaponized to derail their legitimate congressional probes into Burisma. Plus, because journalists were swept onto that conduit list, it created this massive circular logic. If you investigated the Biden story, you automatically became an investigative target of the FBI's task force. It's a complete catch-22, right? The very act of investigating puts a target on your back.
Which brings us to Section 5, Fallout and Internal Investigations. Where exactly do we stand today following these August 2026 declassifications?
Well, the response from current FBI leadership has been incredibly swift. FBI Director Kash Patel completely terminated the Foreign Influence Task Force. Gone. An internal investigation has been blown wide open. The core of this probe, as Patel explained in his letter to the Transparency Task Force, is to figure out if the FITF used Operation Round River to deliberately undermine legitimate law enforcement investigations, just to protect political figures and push a political narrative.
To really put this whole thing into perspective, we have to look at what happened after the operation supposedly buried these files in 2020. Over the next few years, congressional investigations and IRS whistleblowers eventually brought a lot of this evidence into the light anyway. Hunter Biden ended up convicted of tax and gun crimes, and by August 2024, the House Oversight Committee formally concluded that Joe Biden had engaged in impeachable conduct tied to an influence peddling conspiracy. So the huge what-if these sources raise is, how much of this would have been dealt with years earlier if the FBI hadn't hidden its own informants' intelligence?
And according to the reporting, Operation Round River didn't just happen in a vacuum. It fits into a much broader pattern of codenamed counterintelligence operations. You had Crossfire Hurricane targeting the Trump campaign, Oxford Comma in 2017 targeting the president over the Comey firing, and then Round River reportedly neutralizing investigations into the Biden family.
So, we're left with this massive, crucial question to chew on as we wrap up today's explainer. When a law enforcement agency allegedly has evidence of potential corruption, but then alters files to discredit its own informants, what does that do to public trust? FBI Director Patel's stated goal is to make sure future operations focus exclusively on real foreign threats, not domestic politics. But the mechanics we see in Operation Round River, they show just how easily the system was reportedly manipulated from the inside. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking those questions and keep looking at the data.
If you enjoyed this, smash the like button and hit subscribe so you never miss an upload. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next video.